There's a moment when you realize that everything you've been taught about openness, authenticity, and vulnerability is a lie designed to disarm you. It happens in the space between heartbeats, when someone uses your own honesty as a weapon against you, when your transparency becomes their ammunition, when your authenticity becomes your chains. In that crystalline moment of betrayal, you understand the fundamental law that governs all human interaction. The one who reveals less controls more. Most people live their entire lives as open books, bleeding their thoughts onto social media, confessing their fears to acquaintances, wearing their hearts on their sleeves like targets painted in bright red. They mistake this exhibition for connection, this exposure for intimacy, this vulnerability for strength. They are wrong, catastrophically, irreversibly wrong, and their wrongness becomes your advantage if you're wise enough to recognize it. The architecture of power rests on a simple foundation, asymmetrical information. While others scatter their secrets like breadcrumbs for predators to follow, you become a vault. While they live-stream their breakdowns, you craft your silence. While they explain their every decision, you let your actions speak in languages they cannot decode. This is not isolation. This is strategy. This is survival. This is the first law of the untouchable. Consider the executive who never reveals her true opinion in meetings until the moment of decision. While her colleagues exhaust themselves in preliminary battles, showing their hands, revealing their alliances, exposing their weaknesses, she observes. She calculates, she strikes when the information is complete and the moment is optimal. They call her mysterious, they call her calculating, they call her powerful. All three are correct and all three are connected. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. But he only scratched the surface. The deeper truth is that in our hyper-connected age, the gap between appearance and reality has become your greatest weapon. While others collapse this distinction through oversharing, you expand it through strategic opacity. You become not just difficult to read, but impossible to predict. And what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. The untouchable mind operates on principles that reverse conventional wisdom. Where others seek to be understood, you choose to be underestimated. Where others crave validation, you cultivate mystery. Where others fear judgment, you embrace the power of the unknown. This inversion is not natural. It requires training. It demands discipline. It costs comfort. But the returns are exponential. Watch how this unfolds in practice. You're in a team meeting. The project is failing. Tension fills the room like smoke. One by one, your colleagues begin to fracture. Sarah starts explaining her methodology, defending her choices, revealing the insecurities beneath her professional facade. Mark interrupts with accusations, his voice rising, his desperation showing. Jennifer tries to mediate, her need for approval bleeding through every conciliatory word. The room becomes a symphony of exposure, each person opening wider, bleeding more authentically. And you? You say nothing. You wait. You watch. You let the silence stretch until it becomes uncomfortable. Then you let it stretch further until it becomes powerful. When you finally speak, your voice cuts through the chaos with surgical precision. I need to understand what outcome we're optimizing for before I can recommend a path forward. Notice the architecture of this response. No defense, no attack, no revelation. Just a strategic repositioning that forces others to reveal their true priorities while keeping yours hidden. Mark tries to corner you. Well, what do you think went wrong? The room turns towards you, hungry for your blood, eager to see you exposed like the rest. This is the moment. This is the test. This is where most people break and begin their confessions. Instead, you pause, not a hesitation, a deliberate pause that communicates control. I think the right question is what we're going to do differently moving forward. Deflection without evasion, redirection without retreat, You've just demonstrated that you cannot be baited into the same vulnerability trap that caught the others. But the mastery lies not just in what you don't say, but in how you say nothing. Your posture remains centered, neither defensive nor aggressive. Your breathing stays controlled. Your eye contact is direct but not challenging. You're communicating power without words, control without confrontation. The others sense it, even if they can't name it. You've just shown them that you operate by different rules, and they don't know what those rules are. This extends far beyond professional settings. Consider the dynamics of romantic relationships, where the conventional wisdom demands complete transparency. Communication is everything, they say. Share your feelings, they insist. Be vulnerable, they plead. And then they wonder why passion dies, why mystery evaporates, why the very intimacy they sought becomes the prison that constrains them. The untouchable lover understands that desire thrives on the unknown, not the cruel unknown of neglect or indifference, but the intoxicating unknown of depth that cannot be easily plumbed. When your partner asks, "What are you thinking?" the amateur immediately complies, spilling their mental contents like loose change from a torn pocket. The master smiles and says, "I'm thinking about you," which is both completely true and completely revealing of nothing. The digital age has weaponized oversharing into an art form of self-destruction. Social media platforms are designed to extract maximum personal data through the manipulation of your most basic social needs. They've gamified vulnerability, turning your most private moments into content, your most authentic feelings into engagement metrics. Every status update, every photo, every comment becomes a data point in someone else's algorithm designed to predict and influence your behavior. The untouchable digital presence is a masterpiece of controlled revelation. You exist online, but selectively. You engage, but strategically. You share, but never completely. Your social media becomes a curated mystery rather than a diary left open for the world to read. When others are posting their mental breakdowns in real time, you're posting sunset photos with no context. When they're live tweeting their relationship drama, you're sharing a philosophical quote that could mean anything or nothing. Consider how this plays out when someone tries to provoke you publicly online. They screenshot something you posted months ago, add their inflammatory commentary, and tag you directly. The amateur's response is immediate. A long, defensive explanation, screenshots of their own, a point-by-point refutation that only serves to amplify the original attack. You watch this unfold with the calm of a chess master observing amateurs playing checkers. Your response, if you respond at all, comes hours later. Not because you needed time to think of what to say, but because the delay itself is part of the message. Your reply is brief. Interesting perspective. Two words that acknowledge without engaging, validate without agreeing, respond without revealing. The attacker expected a battle and received a void. They threw a stone into an ocean and heard no splash. The psychological impact is devastating because it denies them the very thing they sought, your emotional reaction. But here's where it transcends simple tactics and becomes philosophy. The protection of your inner world is not about building walls, it's about controlling the gates. You don't become a hermit, you become a sanctuary with selective access. The difference is profound and the results are transformative. Think of your mind as a private club with the most exclusive membership criteria in the world. Not everyone gets to know what you're really thinking. Not everyone gets to witness your genuine emotions. Not everyone gets to understand your motivations. This is not cruelty. This is curation. This is not coldness. This is cultivation. You're creating something precious by making it rare. The practical applications multiply exponentially as you master this principle. In negotiations, while others reveal their bottom line through nervous chatter and premature concessions, you communicate through strategic silence and calibrated revelations. When they ask what you're willing to accept, you ask what they're prepared to offer. When they push for your timeline, you inquire about theirs. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to gather intelligence while revealing nothing of value. Machiavelli observed that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But the modern interpretation is more nuanced. It is better to be unpredictable than either feared or loved. Fear can be overcome. Love can be exploited. But unpredictability cannot be strategized against because it cannot be anticipated. The untouchable professional becomes known not for what they say in meetings, but for the quality of their questions, not for their opinions, but for their insights, not for their availability, but for their effectiveness. They speak less, but carry more weight. They reveal less, but command more respect. They promise less, but deliver more impact. Consider the colleague who always has an opinion about everything. They dominate every conversation, offer unsolicited advice, and freely share their judgments about company decisions. Everyone knows exactly where they stand on every issue because they've told everyone exactly where they stand on every issue. They've become as predictable as sunrise and about as remarkable as yesterday's weather. Their voice carries no weight because it carries no scarcity. Now consider the colleague who speaks only when they have something genuinely valuable to contribute. Their words carry weight because they're rare. Their opinions matter because they're selective. Their advice is sought because it's not freely given. When they finally speak, the room listens not just to their words, but to the fact that they chose to speak at all. This dynamic extends into every realm of human interaction. The parent who doesn't constantly explain their decisions to their children maintains authority through appropriate mystery. The leader who doesn't justify every directive preserves the power of command. The friend who doesn't constantly seek validation maintains the attraction of self-sufficiency. But here's the advanced application that separates the masters from the practitioners. You can use controlled revelation as a weapon. Not the crude weapon of withholding information for manipulation, but the sophisticated weapon of strategic transparency that reveals exactly what you want them to see when you want them to see it. You're in a high-stakes business negotiation. The other party has been trying to determine your bottom line for weeks. They've probed through intermediaries, tested through hypotheticals, and pushed through direct questioning. You've given them nothing. Then, in a moment of apparent frustration, you let slip what seems like a genuine concern about timeline pressures. You allow them to see what appears to be vulnerability. They take the bait, adjusting their strategy based on this intelligence, not realizing they're now dancing to your choreography rather than their own. The key is that the revelation must appear accidental while being completely intentional. It must seem like a crack in your armor while actually being a window you've chosen to open. This requires not just tactical thinking, but psychological artistry. You're not just controlling information, you're controlling their interpretation of information. You're not just managing what they know, you're managing what they think they know. The social dynamics become even more interesting when you apply this principle to group settings. You're at a dinner party. The conversation turns to politics, as it inevitably does. Opinions fly like sparks from a fire. Everyone has a position. Everyone needs to be heard. Everyone needs to be right. The volume increases. The positions harden. The friendships strain under the weight of ideological certainty. You remain an island of calm in this storm of ego. When directly asked for your opinion, you respond with a question. I'm curious why this particular issue generates such strong feelings for you. Not evasion, but redirection. Not deflection, but investigation. You've just turned the spotlight away from your position and onto their psychology. They wanted to categorize you, and instead, you've begun to understand them. Someone presses harder. Come on, you must have an opinion about this. The amateur feels pressure to comply, to fit in, to share. The master recognizes this as exactly the moment to demonstrate a different set of rules. "I find that my opinions are less interesting than my questions," you reply, and then you ask a question so insightful, so penetrating, that it reframes the entire conversation. You've just shown everyone in the room that you operate at a different level while revealing absolutely nothing about your actual political beliefs. This is power in its purest form, the ability to influence without exposure, to lead without vulnerability, to connect without compromise. But it requires constant vigilance because the pressure to reveal, to explain, to justify never stops. Society is organized around the extraction of your inner world, and every day brings new opportunities to resist or succumb to this extraction. The romantic realm presents the most complex challenges because intimacy seems to demand transparency. The conventional wisdom insists that love requires complete openness, total vulnerability, absolute honesty. This wisdom is not just wrong, it's destructive. It confuses intimacy with exhibition, love with data sharing, connection with complete revelation. True intimacy is about selective sharing, not total transparency. It's about choosing what to reveal and when to reveal it based on what deepens rather than what merely exposes. The untouchable lover understands that mystery is not the enemy of intimacy. It's the fuel of attraction. Not the mystery of deception, but the mystery of depth, of complexity, of having more to discover. When your partner says, "You never tell me what you're really thinking," the amateur feels guilt and immediately begins a psychological striptease. The master recognizes this as an opportunity for deeper connection through strategic revelation. "I was thinking about how you looked at the sunset yesterday," you say, sharing something true, something intimate, something that draws them closer while revealing nothing they can use against you later. The key distinction is between sharing your experience and sharing your analysis of your experience, between revealing your feelings and revealing your strategy for managing your feelings, between showing your depth and showing your entire map of that depth. The untouchable lover gives their partner ocean, but keeps the navigation charts to themselves. This becomes crucial when relationships face conflict, which all meaningful relationships eventually do. The moment of conflict is when most people abandon all strategic thinking and begin emotional dumping. They reveal not just their immediate feelings, but their entire psychological history, their deepest insecurities, their most devastating fears. They turn intimate moments into therapy sessions and wonder why passion dies under the weight of complete disclosure. Your partner attacks. "You're being distant. You're shutting me out. You never share anything real with me anymore." This is the moment when amateurs break and begin confessing everything from their childhood trauma to their current anxieties. They mistake psychological excavation for intimacy. They believe that if they just explain enough, analyze enough, reveal enough, the conflict will resolve through mutual understanding. The master recognizes this as precisely the moment to demonstrate strength through restraint. "I hear that you're feeling disconnected from me," you respond, acknowledging their experience without accepting their interpretation. "What would help you feel closer?" You've just redirected from explanation to solution, from defense to collaboration, from revelation to resolution. But they push harder, as they often do. "See, you're doing it again. Just tell me what's really going on with you." The pressure intensifies. The expectation builds. This is where most people crack and begin the psychological strip show that destroys both mystery and respect. Instead, you pause, you breathe, you remember that your inner world is not public property, not even in intimate relationships. "I'm processing some things right now," you say. "When I'm ready to share them, you'll be the first to know." Boundary without rejection, protection without punishment, intimacy without inventory. The digital age has created new battlegrounds for the protection of your inner world. Every platform wants your authentic self. Every algorithm wants your genuine reactions. Every app wants your real-time emotions. The business model of social media depends on turning your private thoughts into public content, your personal moments into shareable data, your authentic experiences into engagement metrics. The untouchable digital presence requires a complete reversal of contemporary norms. While others are live streaming their breakdowns, you're curating your calm. While they're posting their opinions on every trending topic, you're posting questions that make others think. While they're sharing their location, their meals, their moods, and their relationships in real time, you're sharing carefully selected glimpses that reveal nothing while suggesting everything. Someone screenshots a private message you sent months ago and posts it publicly, adding their own inflammatory commentary. They tag you, expecting an immediate response, hoping for a public battle that will generate more engagement. The amateur responds within minutes with a long, defensive explanation, screenshots of context, and point-by-point refutations. They've just rewarded the attack with exactly what the attacker wanted. Maximum drama with maximum visibility. Your response comes 12 hours later, if it comes at all. Not because you needed time to craft the perfect comeback, but because the delay itself communicates something important. You are not reactive. You are not controlled by their timeline. You are not dancing to their rhythm. When you do respond, it's with surgical precision. Context matters. 2 words that acknowledge the situation without dignifying the attack, that demonstrate your awareness without revealing your strategy. But the real mastery lies in preventing such attacks from happening in the first place. The untouchable digital presence is like a well-designed fortress, visible enough to be respected, fortified enough to be secure, mysterious enough to be interesting. You exist online but selectively. You engage but strategically. You share but never completely. Your social media becomes a gallery of carefully curated ambiguity. A photo of an empty coffee cup with no caption, a quote from Marcus Aurelius with no commentary, a sunset from an untagged location. Each post suggests depth without revealing specifics, implies meaning without providing interpretation, invites curiosity without satisfying it completely. The professional realm offers perhaps the most complex challenges because success often seems to demand transparency, collaboration, and openness. Team meetings, performance reviews, strategic planning sessions, all designed to extract maximum information from participants. The pressure to share your thinking, reveal your methodology, explain your decisions is constant and overwhelming. The untouchable professional operates by different rules. They understand that in business as in war, information asymmetry is the ultimate weapon. While others exhaust themselves explaining their strategies, you focus on executing them. While they debate their methodologies, you demonstrate your results. While they seek consensus through revelation, you achieve influence through selective disclosure. You're in a strategic planning meeting. The question comes around the table, what's your biggest concern about this initiative? Others begin their psychological excavations. Well, I'm worried about the timeline because last quarter we had issues with vendor management, and personally I struggle with ambiguity, so when the objectives aren't crystal clear, I tend to overthink the process. They're giving away not just their professional concerns, but their personal psychological profiles. Your response is architectural in its precision. I want to understand how we'll measure success before we finalize the approach. Notice the structure. No revelation of personal concerns, no exposure of psychological weaknesses, no confession of past failures. Just a strategic question that forces others to reveal their thinking while keeping yours completely protected. Someone tries to probe deeper, but what specifically worries you about the current plan? The pressure builds. Everyone is waiting. This is the moment when most people crack, and begin explaining not just their professional concerns, but their entire decision-making psychology. The master recognizes this as exactly the moment to demonstrate different operating principles. "I find that my concerns are less useful than my questions," you respond. Then ask a question so insightful that it reframes the entire discussion. You've just demonstrated that you operate at a different level of strategic thinking, while revealing absolutely nothing about your vulnerabilities, your methodology, or your actual concerns. The room now sees you as the person who asks the right questions rather than the person who has the most problems. The perception shift is subtle but profound, from analyst to strategist, from participant to leader, from team member to force multiplier. The advanced application involves using controlled revelation as a strategic weapon, not the crude manipulation of withholding information, but the sophisticated art of revealing exactly what serves your purposes when it serves your purposes. You let slip that you've been researching alternative vendors, not because you're dissatisfied with current ones, but because you want others to assume you have options they don't know about. You mention a conversation with the CEO, not to name drop, but to subtly adjust others' perception of your access and influence. These revelations must appear natural while being completely calculated. They must seem like accidental glimpses while being precisely engineered windows. You're not just managing information, you're managing the interpretation of information. You're not just controlling what they know, you're controlling what they think they know about what you know. Machiavelli understood that since love and fear can hardly exist together if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. But the modern application is more sophisticated. It is far more powerful to be unpredictable than either feared or loved. Fear can be overcome through courage. Love can be exploited through manipulation. But unpredictability cannot be strategized against because it cannot be anticipated. The untouchable mind becomes a fortress with selective windows. Others can see glimpses of what lies within, but never the full architecture, never the complete blueprint, never the total strategic landscape. They develop theories about your motivations, hypotheses about your methods, assumptions about your objectives. All of these serve your purposes as long as none of them are completely accurate. Consider how this plays out in romantic conflict, where the pressure for complete disclosure reaches its maximum intensity. Your partner has discovered something that contradicts their assumptions about you. Maybe it's a conversation you had with an ex. Maybe it's a job opportunity you've been exploring. Maybe it's a decision you made without consulting them. The amateur feels guilt and begins immediate confession, explaining not just the action, but the entire psychology behind the action, the complete thought process, the full emotional landscape that led to the decision. The master recognizes this as precisely the moment when protection of your inner world becomes most crucial. "I can understand why that would be confusing for you," you respond, acknowledging their experience without accepting responsibility for managing their interpretation. "What questions do you have?" You've just shifted from explanation to exploration, from defense to dialogue, from confession to conversation. They push harder as they must. "I just need to understand why you didn't tell me about this." The pressure intensifies, the expectation builds. This is where relationships often break under the weight of forced transparency. Instead, you demonstrate that even in intimate relationships, your inner world remains your sovereign territory. "I was still processing how I felt about it," you say. "I wanted to be clear about my own thoughts before sharing them with you." Boundary without rejection, protection without punishment, privacy without abandonment. The key insight is that protecting your inner world actually strengthens relationships by preserving the mystery that fuels attraction and the respect that sustains connection. When you collapse the boundary between your private thoughts and your shared experience, You eliminate the space where curiosity lives, where imagination thrives, where the other person's mind can create stories about who you are that are more compelling than any explanation you could provide. This becomes even more crucial in the age of social surveillance, where every digital interaction leaves traces, every online purchase creates data, every location visit generates records. The infrastructure of modern life is designed to eliminate privacy, to make your inner world transparent to algorithms, if not to humans. Resistance requires not just tactical thinking, but philosophical commitment to the principle that your consciousness belongs to you alone. The untouchable digital presence becomes an art form of strategic ambiguity. Your online persona suggests depth without revealing specifics, implies complexity without providing explanation, invites curiosity without satisfying it completely. You exist in the digital world, but on your own terms, engaging with platforms without being consumed by them, participating in conversations without surrendering your privacy. Someone tries to corner you in the comments section of a controversial post. They've quoted something you said months ago, taken it out of context, and are demanding that you defend or clarify your position. The amateur immediately engages, providing more context, more explanation, more revelation. They turn a simple exchange into a comprehensive exposition of their entire worldview. The master recognizes this as exactly the kind of trap that social media is designed to create. Your response, if you respond at all, demonstrates mastery through restraint. Interesting interpretation. Two words that acknowledge without engaging, validate without agreeing, respond without revealing. The attacker expected a battle and received a void. They threw a stone into an ocean and heard no splash. The psychological impact is devastating because it denies them exactly what they sought. Your emotional reaction, your defensive explanation, your intellectual engagement with their provocation. But here's where the philosophy transcends tactics and becomes a way of being in the world. The protection of your inner realm is not about building walls. It's about building sovereignty. You're not trying to hide from the world. You're trying to engage with the world from a position of strength rather than vulnerability, choice rather than compulsion, strategy rather than reaction. The untouchable mind operates from a fundamentally different premise than the exposed mind. Where others seek to be understood, you choose to be effective. Where others crave validation, you cultivate capability. Where others fear judgment, you embrace the power of being unknowable. This inversion of conventional priorities creates a completely different relationship with power, influence, and control. As Machiavelli observed, everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are, and those few will not dare to oppose themselves to the opinion of the many. But the modern application goes deeper. In an age where everyone is desperately trying to be seen, understood, and validated, the person who chooses strategic invisibility gains enormous advantage. Not the invisibility of withdrawal, but the invisibility of controlled presence. Not the opacity of confusion, but the opacity of choice. The final test of this philosophy comes not in isolated moments, but in sustained practice across all domains of life. Can you maintain your sovereignty in professional settings where transparency is demanded? Can you preserve your mystery in romantic relationships where complete disclosure is expected? Can you protect your privacy in digital spaces where exposure is incentivized? Can you remain untouchable in a world organized around making you touchable? The answer determines not just your tactical effectiveness, but your existential freedom, because in the end, the battle for your inner world is the battle for your soul. Every time you surrender your privacy, you surrender a piece of your power. Every time you explain what should remain mysterious, you diminish what makes you magnetic. Every time you reveal what should stay hidden, you become more predictable and therefore more controllable. The untouchable mind understands that in a world where everyone is an open book, the closed book becomes infinitely more valuable. Where everyone is broadcasting their thoughts, the silent observer gains enormous advantage. Where everyone is seeking attention through revelation, the person who commands attention through reservation becomes irresistible. You have become the storm that cannot be predicted, the force that cannot be calculated, the power that cannot be contained because it cannot be completely known. You have transcended the need for external validation by creating internal sovereignty. You have moved beyond the requirement for others' understanding by developing your own clarity. You have evolved past the desire for universal approval by cultivating selective appreciation. This is not isolation. This is not coldness. This is not cruelty. This is intelligence applied to the fundamental challenge of human existence. How to remain free in a world designed to make you dependent. How to stay powerful in a system designed to make you vulnerable. How to preserve your essence in an environment designed to extract it. You have learned the most dangerous lesson of all, that your inner world belongs to you and you alone. That your thoughts are not public property, that your emotions are not community resources, that your motivations are not subject to external audit, that your psychology is not democracy where everyone gets a vote. In mastering this principle, you have become something that others sense but cannot define, understand but cannot predict, respect but cannot control. You have achieved the ultimate form of power. The power that doesn't need to announce itself because it speaks through everything you don't say, everything you don't reveal, everything you keep sacred and protected in the fortress of your sovereign mind. You are untouchable, not because you are unreachable, but because you cannot be diminished, not because you are unknowable, but because you cannot be completely known. Not because you are invulnerable, but because your vulnerabilities remain your own choice to share or protect. In a world of open books, you have become a masterpiece of strategic mystery. In an age of forced transparency, you have achieved the ultimate opacity. In a time of mandatory vulnerability, you have discovered invincibility through intelligent reservation. The game is over. You have already won. Not through conflict, but through transcendence. Not through battle, but through evolution. Not through defeating others, but through mastering yourself. You have learned to keep your own counsel, guard your own mysteries, and protect your own power. You have become untouchable, and in that untouchability, you have found the ultimate freedom.